Okay, in the United States, it seems as though we continue to live through unprecedented events. Let's take a closer look at what Biden's decision to end his reelection campaign means, and a lot of other items going on as well. Joining us to discuss all this, Seth Masket, a political science professor and the director of the Center on American Politics at the University of Denver. Seth, thanks so much for taking time. Firstly, your reaction to Joe Biden deciding that he's going to end his reelection effort. He's going to, of course, fulfill his term and stay until January 20th. A lot of people say they didn't see this coming. A lot of people said, how could you not see it coming?
Yeah, it seemed both inevitable and also unthinkable at the same time. He was under a lot of pressure, particularly since his debate against Donald Trump last month. That was just sort of universally seen as a very bad performance that underscored a lot of weaknesses he has as a candidate. And he was under some pressure, certainly from media sources, from some celebrities and donors, but I really think it was some pressure from people within his party, including former President Obama, former Speaker Pelosi. Those are voices he really couldn't ignore. And once so many prominent people were willing to, come out and say publicly that they think he should step down, I think he just found that, that just too much pressure to ignore, and I think he was just sort of looking for just the right time to ease out of the race.
Yeah, I think it's going to be interesting to see if his family weighed in on this behind the scenes, and we know that would probably come out soon. And also Clyburn, James Clyburn has always been very close with the president as well. So that's something to keep an eye on. I've been following a lot of this on social media, and a lot of Republicans are quite upset right now after railing against Biden for some time. Now they're saying the democratic process has been usurped. Your thoughts on that? Do you think that that's a fair argument, or by throwing your support behind your handpicked vice president, doesn't that give this some credence?
I don't really think this is a particularly anti-democratic moment. This is about an internal party discussion, basically. There is not a nominee for the Democratic Party. That is going to be determined next month at the Democratic Convention. There was not a Democratic nominee last week either. Joe Biden has been standing for re-election. He ran. There, a lot of delegates have been elected to the convention that are very supportive of him, but they'll still function in the same role that they were going to play. I don't find that a very strong argument, and I think it's actually in some ways kind of amusing, because just last week, one of Donald Trump's main arguments was that Joe Biden should not be standing, should not be running for president. He's not competent to serve. And now he's complaining that this is anti-democratic. Also, by the way, he's the guy who organized a violent riot and a
January 6th, yeah.
The last January 6th, when he lost his last election. So I find it somewhat ironic statement there.
And Seth, to be clear, this isn't coming from me. I'm just passing on what I read on social media. Okay, let's talk about Biden's economic legacy as well, because he inherited a U.S. economy incredibly fragile, incredibly brittle, and we heard his vice president talk about really what he did in just one term.
Yeah, it's an interesting situation because in some ways the U.S. economy is actually quite strong. It has decent growth, very low unemployment, but it also has not currently experiencing high inflation, but it was fairly recently. 2021 and 22 had historically pretty high inflation, and a lot of Americans are still not really feeling very confident in the state of the U.S. economy. They're continuing to be very concerned. They believe the nation is off on the wrong track, and in a situation like that, they tend to blame the incumbent party. And that is a good part of the reason Biden has been unpopular. That is something that's going to be difficult for Kamala Harris, assuming she is the next Democratic nominee, that she will still face some of the blame for that, and will be doing her best to make an account of that. But that's something that the Trump campaign will be hitting Democrats on pretty hard.
Okay, two-parter here. One, do you think that Vice President Harris is really energizing the Democratic Party? Where does she stand on Biden's big policies, American Rescue Plan Act, Inflation Reduction Act? And secondly, Trump, who was no stranger to litigation, is already carping about the fact that, wait, we spent tens of millions of dollars to take on Biden. We want that money back.
Well, I think it's interesting that, Harris has really been a very loyal vice president over the past 3.5 years. She has not really communicated any sort of differences with Joe Biden on his main signature accomplishments. So, I mean, I'm assuming she's going to be basically running in support of those. She's talking about Biden very reverently right now, and not really seeing any need to distance herself from his accomplishments, or certainly his signature legislative achievements. I don't really think Donald Trump has any sort of leg to stand on in terms of, I want my money back because I was campaigning against a different candidate for the last few months. He's not sort of entitled to have his attack ads land on the right target or anything like that. The timing is challenging, of course. I mean,
Sure.
the Republican convention was just run, largely against Joe Biden. And so now they have to pivot, but of course they have 4 months to pivot and come up with plenty of arguments against Kamala Harris, which I'm sure they will do.